Welcome to Sales, Tax, and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now, here is your host, Michael Fleming.
Hi, I'm Mike Fleming, founder of Sales, Tax, and More, and today's co-host of the Sales, Tax, and More podcast, where we talk about everyone's favorite subject, which is, of course, sales tax. Today, my co-host, Ellie Moffat, is going to be interviewing me about drop shipping in the Post-Wayfair world. Before we get started, let's introduce you to Ellie.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here, and I'm going to just do a quick introduction for Sales, Tax, and More as well. So Sales, Tax, and More is a full-service consulting and solutions firm. We have a really great team here of experienced tax professionals who are very dedicated to fulfilling any of your state tax or related needs. So we do a lot of returns, registrations, consulting, research, and like our name states, more. So if you have questions about our services, please reach out and ask. We will give you plenty of ways to do so. And Mike, attention back on you here. Why is it that you say drop shippers have been impacted harder than most companies when it comes to Wayfair?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Ellie. Thanks for asking. Drop shipping's been tough for just about all companies out there. We're all finding that lots of companies have to register and collect tax in more states than they ever have before. And the same thing is true of drop shippers, except, drop shippers may not have had a responsibility to collect in any states. If they were located in a state without a sales tax, in theory, they didn't have to collect sales tax anywhere because of the business model. So you've got, companies that were registered maybe in their home state, maybe in 0 states, all of a sudden have to worry about perhaps getting registered everywhere across the country that has a sales tax, 46 states plus Washington, D.C. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that now they have to, because all of their vendors also have nexus in so many more places. Their vendors are asking them for more certificates. So now they have to figure out, not only do I need to collect tax, but if I don't need to collect sales tax somewhere, what can I provide my vendor so that they don't charge me sales tax on my purchases that are actually sales for resale?
Yeah, and there's always, seems like a lot of confusion around those certificates, and the more people asking, the more confusion. So why is there so much confusion when it comes to these resale certificates in a drop shipping scenario, Mike?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, a sale for resale is not recognized as a sale for resale unless it's properly documented. And that's why so much of the problems come in here, because each state requires different types of documentation. There's also, a lack of common terminology. Some states, talk about wholesalers. And what happens if you're a retailer or if you're a distributor, or, do you use the same language? If they're talking about manufacturers, does this apply to you? So a lack of common terminology is an issue. And then it's, 2 transactions. And a lot of us look at this as one big, long transaction, when in reality, we need to look at it as at least 2 separate transactions. Some drop shipping scenarios have multiple parties, but today we're going to keep it simple, just 2 transactions. And for some reason, that's our minds go blank, or a lot of people's minds go blank when they look at this as one big transaction rather than 2 separate transactions. Another reason why it's pretty confusing is that we forget to use the basics, or we don't know the basics. And the basics are that sales are sourced to wherever the property is being shipped to. So that's number one. And when I say sourced, that means, that's the state's rate that you've got to charge. And if you're going to be providing a certificate, it's also to that state. So it's the delivery state. And, if you're collecting a certificate in lieu of charging a tax, then it just stands to reason that that certificate must be acceptable to the delivery state also. So lots of confusion in there, especially when, some companies believe that a sale for resale is a sale for resale. It doesn't matter what documentation that I give you. Unfortunately, it matters a lot, because if it's not properly documented, the state's not going to treat it as a sale for resale. So that's why, your vendors are being a little bit tougher than they used to be. They don't want to have to pay the tax for you. So they want to either make sure they collect a valid certificate, or they must charge you the tax.
Yeah, Mike, when you were talking there, I was just thinking about the people that have come to us so confused, not knowing where to start. There's so many people out there who just have no idea what to do, especially drop shippers. So Mike, do companies need to register everywhere in order to issue a certificate?
This is a common mistake. Sometimes, one of your vendors will have been audited, or they, know of someone who's been audited, or all of a sudden a light bulb comes on and they realize they need to be collecting these certificates everywhere. So they start telling their customers, you need to run out and get registered everywhere. And unfortunately, that's just not the truth. You only need to be registered wherever you have nexus. Let me back up. There are some states like a California, and there are 10 of these type states where in order to issue a valid certificate, you must be registered. But if you don't have nexus, in 36 states, there's some sort of alternative documentation that you can provide your vendor that they should be able to accept, and it's going to protect them and allow them to not charge you the tax. So this is what we call alternative documentation. It will only work in states where you don't have nexus. If you have nexus, then you must get registered in order to issue a valid certificate. And then, as I was mentioning, there are 10 states, California is one, Tennessee is another, Connecticut's a third, Maryland, the state of Massachusetts, Washington, D.C., the state of Mississippi, the state of Ohio, and then depending on the circumstances, the state like Florida and Louisiana, you may have to be registered there in order to issue valid certificates also. So big fallacy that you got to run out and get registered everywhere. If you have nexus everywhere, you should be, getting registered in to collect and remit sales tax anyway. But you don't have to do so if you don't have nexus, and you can still provide that vendor with the documentation.
Thank you so much for that, Mike. And I think this is the beginning of some information that we also have in other places. And I'll just do a little plug here for the webinars we also offer. But what recommendations do you have for companies involved with drop shipping?
Well, one is knowing the basics. So as Ellie was mentioning, we've got some great webinars where we go over the basics. And once you understand the basics, you'll know what you can provide to your vendors, and the vendors can know what they can accept. So education is key. We as both sides of the equation need to be up to speed on knowing what types of alternative documentation they can either issue, or what types of alternative documentation and under what circumstances they can accept this. That takes away a lot of the friction. If you can show your customers that you're working with them and that you're showing them all of this other documentation, making their life easier, not telling them they need to go out and register everywhere, it just makes the whole transaction go smoother. Because if you're giving your customers a hard time, they're going to be looking elsewhere to take that business. Or they're going to end up getting registered and they're going to end up paying more tax than they should. So if you're the actual retailer in this situation, you got to know what you can give. And if you're still at an impasse, sometimes you bring in a third party, someone like us, where we can explain to the vendor why this alternative documentation will work. Or we come in on the side of the vendor and we try to talk to the customers, independent third party, and say, hey, they're not trying to be tough and make your life tougher than it needs to be. Here's why they're asking for this. And in order to protect them and in order to protect you, because they may come after you 2-3 years down the road, if they do get audited, a lot of sellers, go to their customer and say, hey, we should have charged you tax on this. You gave us the wrong certificate. And that just ruins relationships. So to prevent all of this, knowing this alternative documentation is very important, whether you're, a retailer utilizing a drop shipper or whether you are drop shipping for your customers. This education is paramount.
So, Mike, where could people go to find this education? Are there any resources that you recommend?
Yeah, to learn the basics, there are lots of webinars out there. As we mentioned, we have a free webinar that goes over a lot of this. We also, have a chart. It's not on the free portion of our website. We do have many, many charts in the free portion of our website. But we also have a what we call the Salt Vault, and that's the premium portion of our website. There's lots of charts and matrices there, and this is one of the charts and matrices that we do have in our Salt Vault. It will list all of the states out there and all of the different types of alternative documentation that could be used, where a retailer does not have to go out and get registered. As long as they don't have Nexus, they can issue one of these alternative documents, and the seller will not have to charge them tax. So that's a great resource there. It's the only resource I know of that has all of this information in one place.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your time, for your recommendations here, and really appreciate you. I enjoy being on this podcast as well. Do you want to close out with some information on how people can get in touch with us?
Yeah, absolutely, Ellie. So our website is www.salestaxandmore.com. It's all spelled out, salestaxandmore.com. Plenty of ways where you can utilize the free resources that I talked about. You can also see the Salt Vault there. And there are ways that you can submit your information to talk to someone here. Or if they want to take a shortcut, Ellie, they can always email you at emoffat@salestaxandmore.com. So that's EMOFFAT@salestaxandmore.com. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to talking with you on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and check out all of the resources we have out on the web.